In this lesson, we'll learn about the color picker inside Adobe Photoshop. Alright, so in previous lessons we've talked about many different aspects of color, and now it's time to take what we've already learned and learn how to apply that within an application that's commonly used in the design world. That application for this lesson is going to be Adobe Photoshop. Now really, all of the Adobe programs are going to handle color in a similar fashion, but we'll just use Photoshop to illustrate that now. Now, Adobe Photoshop handles color mainly through something called a color picker. Now we can access that color picker either by double-clicking on our foreground color or our background color here in the toolbar, or we can come up here to our color palette and double-click on one of those two swatches here in this palette as well. So let's just go and double-click on one of these, and you'll see that we've opened up a color picker here. Now there's really a lot of different options within this picker, and we're going to go ahead and just start talking about a few of these. Now the first thing you'll notice is we've got this large area of color here on the left. This is going to be our color selection area. There's a little circle within this color selection area, and that's the color that we have selected. Now in moving this around, you'll see here that this top color in this little window to the right changes. Now I had this purple color selected originally when I launched the color picker, and now I've changed the color, so this is our new color. Now there are a couple of little small icons here just to the right of this window, and we'll talk briefly about those real quick. Now this top one here, it looks like a little exclamation point. If we mouse over that, it turns yellow. Now this little warning, or this little alert right here, means that the color that we have selected is outside of the gamut for CMYK printing. Now we're not going to go into all the details of CMYK printing, but I just want you to know that we can correct that by just simply clicking on the small square below the exclamation point, and that will switch our color on the left to a color that is within the range of CMYK printing. So I'll just click on that now. And notice the color changed quite a bit, but there is another little alert here right below that, and you see a little cube icon here. Now this little icon indicates that the color we have selected is not a web safe color. It doesn't exist on one of our web safe palettes. This means that this color couldn't be used in a document that's going to be published on the internet. Now similar to the CMYK warning, we can actually just click on this little box right below the cube, and it'll switch it to the closest color that is on a web safe color palette. So I'll just switch it over there just like so, and you'll notice that both of those alerts have disappeared. Now in further exploring this palette, you'll notice here down in sort of the bottom right hand area there's quite a bit of information. There's several different fields where we can input numbers. Now we're not going to talk about all of these different areas right now, but the area I want you to focus on is this area right here that indicates an H, an S, and a B. These three letters represent hue, saturation, and brightness. Now this should sound kind of familiar. In earlier lessons we talked about hue, saturation, and value. And these three fields essentially control those three elements. So I'm just going to let's look here at the hue field. Now I'm just going to move our color selection up here to the top left corner, and if you notice here there's a rainbow colored slider sort of in the middle of the screen. Now this is our hue selection. Now right now our value in this hue field is a 0, but as I grab one of these two little white arrows on either side of this vertical bar and move those, you'll notice that the value changes there, with at the very top that red being 0, and moving down throughout the different hue range of hues there, and ending up back here at 0. So you'll see here that there's really 360 different hue options displayed here within this hue field. Now let's just look here at this document behind the picker. This is the document we used in the earlier lesson when we were talking about tints and shades. Now remember that these colors right here are our 12 segments in the center, and they're fully saturated. So let's just go ahead and select this primary red color here, and you'll notice that the color selection moves right up here to the very top right hand corner. Now we talked about to create a tint of this color, we add white to it, and that will actually reduce the saturation. So if we look down here at the saturation field, it right now is at 100%. But if we come over here and select this first ring outside, this first tint, we're adding 20% white, and you'll notice that the color selection moves a little bit to the left, and our saturation box now displays 80% saturation. Now, if we keep selecting and we select a little more, another swatch here with a little more white in it, let's say that 40% white, you'll notice that it moves even further to the left and reduces the saturation to 60%. So this number right here directly relates to how much white that I added in it, and by reducing the saturation, our little circle here is moving from right to left on our color picker area. Now, similar to this, we can look here at our shades. Remember, we're adding black for our shades, and we're going to just first select this inner ring, adding, I believe it was 20% black, and you'll notice that we're switching to about 79% brightness. So that's about 20% black being added to that. And if we continue moving down these rings, we're adding more and more black, and notice that our color selection here is actually moving down this window. So moving from right to left decreases saturation, and moving from top to bottom decreases the brightness of the color we have selected. So really, so far we've talked about reducing the saturation and reducing the brightness. But if you remember, we also talked about tones. Now, tones actually reduce the saturation and the brightness at the same time. So let's come over here to this other document I have open here, and we'll select some colors in this. We'll just deselect that area real quick, and let's just bring up our color picker again. Now, remember, we have tones where we're adding gray to our 12 segments here. So I'm going to select our primary red and then select this first ring. And you'll notice, based on the amount of gray that we've added there, we've actually moved at sort of an angle here from the top right corner, moving down and to the left at the same time. So we're decreasing both the saturation and the brightness at the same time by adding gray. And if we continue to select these, adding more and more gray, you'll notice that that continues to move down at an angle here. So that is how the color picker is going to handle tints, shades, and tones. Now, there are just a couple more options here I want to talk to you about. We've got this Add to Swatches button right here. Now, this Add to Swatches button is going to be just a really quick way to add the color that we have selected over to our swatch palette. So let's just go ahead and select a color here. Let's pick this, maybe a blue color, and let's just hit Add to Swatches. Now, another little dialog comes up and says, well, what color do you want to name this swatch? And let's just say Test Blue is going to be the color name. And it brings us back to our color picker. Now if we cancel this out and we come over to our swatch palette, you'll notice that this blue has been added to the very end of our swatch palette. So just a really quick way to add a swatch. Let's go back to our color picker here. Now there's just a couple other options. Notice we've got this field right here. Now this is called a hexadecimal number. If you're designing for a web project, then this is the color that you would pass on to the person doing the code work to interpret that color. So, and if we wanted to see exactly where the web safe colors were, we could actually come over here and check this little box that says Only Web Colors. That's going to display only the colors that are visible on the internet for us. You can see here it visibly changes the color selection area and creates some really interesting patterns within this. It also changes the look of this right here. It's actually reducing the amount of colors that are available to us because we can't display as many colors on the internet. But let's just go ahead and turn this off for right now. And this is the color picker within Adobe Photoshop. Now again, all of Adobe's programs are going to use some variation of this color picker. They may look just a little bit different, but usually what they're doing is taking away a couple of the features or maybe adding in a feature. So they're really going to look pretty similar. Let's just go ahead and cancel that out. And now in this lesson we have explored the color picker within Adobe Photoshop. In the next lesson, we'll learn about another useful tool that's been integrated into the Adobe products called the Cooler extension.